Remember when a show could make car crashes feel wholesome? Where the heroes were outlaws, the cops were cartoons, and the moral of the story was basically drive faster? Well, welcome to the Dukes of Hazzard, a show that didn't just defy logic, it ran it off the road and launched it off a hay bale, and we loved every second of it. Bo and Luke, played by John Schneider and Tom Wopat, were two good old Georgia boys on probation, constantly outrunning the law for crimes that they weren't even committing anymore. Now, they lived with Uncle Jesse, the family's moral compass, and their cousin Daisy, whose outfits caused more traffic accidents than the general elite. It wasn't prestige TV, it was freeze frames, flying cars, and wall-to-wall denim. But for 6 years, Friday nights meant one thing: a bright orange Dodge Charger, teeny tiny shorts, cousins who refused to use car doors, Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane, who couldn't catch a cold, and Boss Hogg, who ran every scam in a 5-mile radius, all while sweating through a 3-piece white suit. Today we're going to count down 15 weird facts that you never knew about the Dukes of Hazzard. But before we dive in, be sure to like and subscribe. It really does help the channel. All right, guys, let's get on with the countdown. Number 15, Uncle Jesse was loaded. On screen, Uncle Jesse was a backwoods moonshiner who always seemed one traffic ticket away from losing the farm. He wore overalls, dispensed folksy wisdom, and acted like a $20 bill was a small fortune. But off screen, Denver Pyle was loaded. And not from moonshine. He got rich by outsmarting actual oil tycoons. Before the Dukes of Hazzard, Pyle was already a familiar face on TV. He was best known for a string of roles in the 60s and 70s, including his fan-favorite turn as Briscoe Darling on The Andy Griffith Show. Now, after his run in Mayberry, Pyle started buying up old oil wells that most investors had just written off. At the time, oil was just selling for $2.15 a barrel. Yeah, and everyone thought that he was wasting his money. But then came the 1973 oil crisis.
World wars among big powers are quite possible to control dwindling oil supply.
Prices skyrocketed, and new extraction technologies made it possible to revive older, tapped-out wells. Suddenly, those worthless plots were gushing profits. By 1981, Pyle had made more from oil speculation than from 3 decades in Hollywood. And yet, he kept acting. As he put it, acting provides the cash flow that I need for oil speculation, and besides that, I like acting. It's fun. So while Uncle Jesse was out plowing fields and mending fences, Denver Pyle was using his TV paycheck to fund his next oil deal. After the Dukes of Hazzard ended in 1985, Pyle kept working, mostly in guest roles in TV movies. He reprised Briscoe Darling in Return to Mayberry, he popped up on Murder, She Wrote, and Dallas, and even played a riverboat gambler in the 1994 film Maverick. His final role was Uncle Jesse one last time in the 1997 Dukes of Hazzard reunion movie, filmed just before his passing later that year. Off-screen, he continued investing in oil and launched Uncle Jesse's Fishing Tournament, a Texas-based charity event that raised millions for children's programs. So, yeah, the beard said country wisdom, but the bank account said, I could buy this county and still have change for a tractor. Number 14, John Schneider lied his way into the show. Now, John Schneider may have played a good old Georgia boy on TV, but in real life, he was an 18-year-old kid from Mount Kisco, New York. About as far from the backwoods South as you could get without needing a passport. So when he heard about the audition for Bo Duke, he did what any resourceful teenager with 0 Southern credentials would do. He invented a backstory and showed up in costume. He borrowed a beat-up pickup truck, he skipped shaving for a few days, and threw on what he called a funky hat. And then he walked into the audition toting a beer, and he claimed that he was from Snailville, Georgia. He even laid on a Southern accent so thick that producers probably asked him where to find the best barbecue in town. And guess what? It worked. The best part was, too, that he didn't even know how to drive the General Lee when he got the job. He had to learn after being cast. So, yeah, an 18-year-old from a New York suburb talked his way into one of the most iconic Southern roles in TV history. And he pulled it off for 7 seasons. If that's not the American dream, I don't know what is. Number 13, the Dukes started in Georgia, and then Hollywood took over. In November of 1978, filming began on the Dukes of Hazzard across real Georgia towns: Oxnard, Loganville, Social Circle, Conyers, Covington, and Atlanta. Real back roads, real Southern charm, real humidity that probably fried half the camera equipment. And here's something that you might not have noticed. Those first 5 episodes had a very different vibe. The tone was grittier, humor was more adult, and the language was a little rougher around the edges. It was the Dukes of Hazzard before the network stepped in with a bottle of TV bleach. Now, once Warner Brothers saw the final cut and realized that they may have a hit on their hands, they made a classic Hollywood decision. Let's scale up and move everything to California. Now, production shifted to the Warner Brothers Burbank Studios and Disney's Golden Oak Ranch in Newhall. It made logistics easier, and it gave them the space to build a giant car shop because they already knew that they'd be launching and destroying Chargers by the dozen. So if those couple early episodes felt more raw and more real, it's because they were. After episode 5, Hazzard County became whichever patch of California that they could dress up with a couple of hay bales and a "y'all come back now" sign. And speaking of real Georgia landmarks, the Boar's Nest, yeah, that's still standing in Covington. But these days, it's not a bar. It's actually a Deliverance Christian tabernacle. Yeah, the place where Daisy would serve beer and the boys would get into bar fights, that's now where people gather to pray. That's not just ironic, that's like a sermon waiting to happen. Number 12. Daisy's shorts were almost a poodle skirt. The single most influential pair of shorts in American pop culture almost didn't exist. When Catherine Bach landed the role of Daisy Duke in 1979, the wardrobe department handed her a script that basically said, "wholesome southern waitress," and a costume to match. We're talking a poodle skirt that matched the tablecloths at the Boar's Nest. Bach took one look at the outfit and said, I've got a better idea. Then she pitched a tied-off gingham top, high heels, and a pair of cut-off denim shorts that she made herself at home. The producers were cool with it, but the network, yeah, they were not. They thought the shorts were too short for primetime, so they made Bach wear flesh-colored pantyhose underneath so that nothing showed that wasn't supposed to. The funny thing is, the pantyhose actually made her legs look longer and more polished on camera, and America lost its mind. Women all over the nation started cutting up old Levi's. Stores couldn't keep denim cutoffs on the shelves. Bach's Daisy Duke poster sold over 5 million copies, a figure that put her in the same pinup league as Farrah Fawcett. Teenage boys taped it to their bedroom walls. Teenage girls taped it to their closet doors as a style reference. It was pandemonium. By the early 80s, somebody somewhere started calling the shorts Daisy Dukes, and the name stuck. The term landed in the dictionary. Hip-hop artists wrote songs about him in the 90s and 2000s. Britney, Beyonce, Jessica Simpson. Every generation has since reinterpreted the look. Number 11. The price of all those crashes, it may surprise you. All right, let's be real. The Dukes of Hazzard, it was just an excuse to jump cars, blow stuff up, and occasionally throw in a plot. The General Lee would get launched off ramps, over creeks, through barns, across bridges, and occasionally into what looked like a different dimension. And someone had to be in that car when it happened. A real person with real bones and real insurance premiums. Now, stunt performers would get hurt a lot. Cars would flip when they weren't supposed to, jumps went sideways, literally, roll cages failed, harnesses snapped, and unlike today's sets with CGI safety nets, these crashes, they weren't digital. It was just some poor guy named Rusty in a helmet clutching whatever religious token he could fit into the glove box. And it wasn't just the stunt team. In 1980, a camera assistant named Rodney Mitchell was tragically killed when his camera truck lost control in a patch of mud during filming. It's a sobering reminder that behind all the yeehaws and slow-motion crashes, real people were putting themselves at risk to create these iconic moments that we still remember. The show went through stunt drivers faster than it went through Chargers, and that's saying something. Honestly, the unsung heroes may have been the chiropractors and physical therapists of greater LA. They were probably booked solid for 7 years. Number 10, the General Lee got more fan mail than the cast. You might have loved Bo and Luke, or maybe you had a crush on Daisy like I do, but statistically, you probably wrote a letter to the car. At the height of the show's popularity, the Dukes of Hazzard received around 60,000 letters a month, and over half of them were addressed to the General Lee. Yeah, a Dodge Charger was outshining the human cast in raw fan enthusiasm. Kids wanted to know the engine specs, adults wanted to know how to buy one, and some fans just wrote heartfelt notes telling how the General looked cool jumping through a billboard in slow motion. It wasn't just a car, it was a star. Now, if you ask Warner Brothers, it's also a merchandising goldmine. So yes, the Dukes of Hazzard did feature actors, but the real breakout star, it was bright orange, had a horn that played Dixie, and never missed its mark. Number 9, the survivors are worth more than most people's houses. Now here's a financial plot twist that'll make you rethink every decision you've ever made. The Dukes of Hazzard went through over 300 Dodge Chargers during production, turning classic muscle cars into orange-painted projectiles for our entertainment. But today, only about 17 to 20 authentic screen-used General Lees are known to exist. And those survivors, well, they're worth more than most people's retirement funds. We're talking upwards of $250,000 for a genuine on-screen General Lee, depending on its condition and how many times it actually flew through the air. That's not just expensive, that's I could buy a house in the Midwest or this car that once cleared a barn expensive. And here's the kicker. In 2008, John Schneider once sold one of his replica General Lees for $230,000. Not a screen-used car, just a really solid copy that was owned by Bo himself. But wait, it gets better. In 2012, golfer, one of my favorites, Bubba Watson, bought Lee 1, the very first General Lee used in the pilot, for $110,000. It's gone a pretty long way from launching over barns to sitting in a climate-controlled garage, but I suppose that's what happens when a TV car meets PGA money. So yeah, that orange blur that you saw every Friday night, well, it's now worth more than your first house, your college education, and probably the car that you're driving right now. The show, it didn't just blow up cars. It accidentally created some of the most expensive TV memorabilia on the planet. All right, we're about halfway through the countdown, so hey, if you're still here, go ahead and tap that like button and subscribe. That helps us know that you're enjoying this ride through Hazzard County. All right, let's get back to it. Number 8, Boss Hogg was a genius. Sorrel Booke was what you call a legitimate genius. He was valedictorian of his high school class. He enrolled at Columbia at 16 and graduated by 19, before most people even pick a major. Then he went to Yale for his Master of Fine Arts. He served as a counterintelligence officer during the Korean War and was fluent in 6 languages: English, French, Japanese, Spanish, Russian, and Italian. Oh, and he fussed with about half a dozen more, including Arabic, Mandarin, and Swedish. Because apparently being a polyglot Yale-trained war vet, that wasn't enough. But before the Dukes of Hazzard, Booke had already built a serious resume. Broadway roles, an Emmy nomination, and standout parts on shows like MASH, Columbo, and All in the Family. But to most of America, he's always going to be Boss Hogg, the corrupt, white-suited cartoon of small-town political corruption. But here's the twist. Booke was only 5'6" and weighed about 185 pounds during filming. To bring Boss Hogg to life, he wore padding that expanded his waistline to a full 5 feet around. And that syrupy southern draw, well, he modeled it after real U.S. senators, Sam Ervin and Storm Thurmond, because yes, the man did research for Boss Hogg. So the next time you see him waddling through Hazzard County in that 3-piece white suit, just remember, that's a Yale-educated, multilingual ex-intelligence officer, wearing sofa cushions and turning Southern politics into comedy gold. Now, after the Dukes of Hazzard ended in 1985, Sorrel Booke didn't fade away. He just switched gears. He became a prolific voice actor, lending his talents to everything from Scooby-Doo Meets the Boo Brothers to Captain Planet and Bonkers. He even guest conducted the Buffalo Philharmonic Orchestra, because of course he did. Now, Booke passed away in 1994 at the age of 64, but his legacy, as both a classically trained actor and the most unforgettable county commissioner in TV history, still lives on. Number 7, the forgotten movie that gave us Hazzard County. Now, before Bo and Luke were jumping creeks in slow motion with a banjo soundtrack, the Dukes of Hazzard started as a little-known 1975 film called Moonrunners, written and directed by Guy Waldron, who later created the show. The movie followed 2 cousins, Grady and Bobby Lee Hagg, who were played by James Mitchum and Kyle Martin, as they bootlegged moonshine for their Uncle Jesse, played by Arthur Honeycutt in Shiloh County, Georgia. That sound familiar? I mean, this thing had everything. A souped-up 1955 Chevrolet named Traveler, a crooked sheriff named Roscoe Coltrane, car chases, outlaw drama, and a corrupt local bootlegger named Jake Rainey, played by George Ellis, and Waylon Jennings as the balladeer, just like in the TV show. Now, even Ben Jones, who went on to play Cooter on the Dukes of Hazzard, pops up in a minor role as a Chicago federal agent. But Moonrunners, it wasn't exactly family-friendly. It was grittier, more violent, and the characters actually did face consequences. Uncle Jesse dies, there's an affair subplot, and yes, the cousins use explosive arrows to blow up a moonshine factory. When Waldron adapted the concept for TV, he toned it way down. Less violence, more laughs, and a freeze-frame ending where nobody ever got seriously hurt. So yeah, the Dukes came from a movie, just with fewer consequences, more yeehaws, and law enforcement that felt like it came from Saturday morning cartoons. Number 6, the theme song was a chart-topping country hit. You're already singing it, aren't you? Just the good old boys. Yeah, it's Waylon. The Dukes of Hazzard theme song wasn't just catchy. This was a bona fide hit. It was written and performed by country legend Waylon Jennings. The theme from the Dukes of Hazzard, or Good Old Boys, hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot Country charts in 1980 and even reached number 21 on the Hot 100. That's a legit crossover bit of success. Now, the song gave the show serious cultural credibility, especially in the South. And decades later, it's still one of the most recognizable theme songs in TV history. But Good Old Boys didn't ride off into the sunset when the show ended. Since then, it's been covered and reimagined by country legends, and a few pop culture oddballs too. Jennings' son, Shooter Jennings, has performed it live at Duke Fest. John Schneider, Tom Wopat, and Catherine Bach even filmed the music video version for the Season 7 DVD. Schneider has kept the tradition alive in his solo performances as well. In the 2005 reboot movie, Willie Nelson, aka Uncle Jesse, handled the vocals, and in 2007's The Dukes of Hazzard, The Beginning, John Anderson gave it a grittier southern rock vibe. But that's not even counting the wild versions. Travis Tritt, Lil White, even Alvin and the Chipmunks covered it. Even people who couldn't tell you who Cooter is still sing that song. And let's be honest, it still slaps. Number 5, the cast took one look and said, nope. You would think a big screen reboot of The Dukes of Hazzard would be the perfect chance to bring back the original cast for some nostalgic cameos and a Hollywood victory lap. But no, not even close. John Schneider, Tom Wopat, and Catherine Bach all took one look at the script and politely declined their cameo offers. And when we say politely declined, we mean that they probably read 2 pages and then ran screaming from the room. Ben Jones, aka Cooter, took it even further. He called the film sleazy. He boycotted the premiere and publicly said that it had nothing in common with the show's original spirit. And this came from a guy who spent 7 seasons pretending to fix cars that were held together with duct tape and a prayer. Now, when the very people who made the show iconic actively distanced themselves from the reboot, passing up easy money and fresh exposure, that's not just a red flag. That's a signal flare visible from space. Somehow, the 2005 movie took everything charming about the original and then turned it into something that made the cast visibly uncomfortable. That's a weird kind of talent, but not the good kind. Number 4, the contract dispute that nearly sank the show. At the absolute peak of the Duke of Hazzard's success, when the show was dominating ratings and cranking out every kind of merch imaginable, John Schneider and Tom Wopat just walked away. For years, the rumor mill said that they left to become movie stars. Tabloids blamed ego, but the real reason? Money. Specifically, merch money. Their faces were on lunchboxes, toy cars, bed sets, maybe even waffle irons, but they weren't getting a fair cut of the profits. So Schneider and Wopat staged a walkout that would make any union proud. And the network's response? Well, enter the new cousins, Coy and Vance Duke, played by Byron Cherry and Christopher Mayer. With the same car, same hair, and none of the charisma. Ratings tanked, and fan mail, it turned to hate mail. Coy and Vance were reportedly signed to multi-year deals, but only made it through 19 episodes of Season 5. The moment the lawsuit was settled, Bo and Luke came roaring back, as the stand-ins were erased like they never existed. No goodbye, no flashback, not even a passing mention. And to this day, most fans still can't tell you which one was Coy and which one was Vance. And honestly, that's probably for the best. Number 3, the animated Dukes. Same car, more shenanigans.
The Dukes of Hazzard gave us moonshine-fueled backroad chases, corrupt small-town officials, and 2 good old boys who somehow avoided prison by driving really fast and never meaning no harm. It was pure southern fried chaos. So, naturally, the animated version asked, what if we took all that and replaced it with an international car race, sabotage schemes, and a raccoon named Smokey? In The Dukes, which launched in 1983, the Dukes enter a globe-spanning automobile race to win prize money that'll save the family farm from foreclosure. Boss Hogg, Sheriff Roscoe, and Roscoe's dog Flash join the race too. Their plan is to cheat their way to victory, win the prize money, and snatch up Duke Family Farm in the process. Side note, who sponsored this world race and where were the other drivers? Anyway, I digress. Each episode kicks off with Uncle Jesse reading a letter aloud to his pet raccoon, Smokey, updating him on the latest racing adventures. Because apparently in the early 80s, the target audience for high-speed chase recaps was small woodland creatures. But if the premise wasn't wild enough, here comes the real twist. When the cartoon premiered, Bo and Luke were MIA thanks to a contract dispute. So the cartoon starred their off-brand cousins, Coy and Vance, played by Byron Cherry and Christopher Mayer, aka the backup band no one paid to see. So for one whole season, kids watched animated Coy and Vance race across the globe like they were the real stars of the franchise. Then Tom Wopat and John Schneider patched things up with CBS, so naturally Coy and Vance disappeared at the beginning of Season 2, while Bo and Luke magically reappeared. No explanation, no farewell, just a hard swap. The animation was classic Hanna-Barbera. You know, recycled running cycles, gravity-optional jumps, and the General Lee's Dixie horn blasting in every country from France to Fiji because subtlety wasn't exactly in the Duke's toolkit. And if everything looked and sounded a little familiar, well, that's because this was the same studio behind Scooby-Doo and the Flintstones. Recycled sound effects and background art you probably saw in 3 other shows that same morning. While The Dukes only lasted 20 episodes across 2 seasons, it delivered everything you'd expect from a Saturday morning adaptation. Slapstick action, outrageous disguises, cartoon logic, and Uncle Jesse's raccoon sidekick, who somehow made more sense than Coy and Vance. At least Smokey didn't get kicked to the curb after one season.
Number 2, the iconic driving move that only worked one way. You ever notice something odd about the Duke's signature two-wheel driving stunts? Well, go back and watch. The generally almost always rides up on the driver's side, with the passenger side wheel still hugging the ground. Same goes for the sheriff's car, too. Now, that wasn't a coincidence. It was all because of one man, Buzz Bundy, a ski car legend who pulled off most of those wild stunts. Here's the kicker. Buzz could only do it with the driver's side in the air. He tried flipping it, but he physically couldn't. He compared it to being right or left-handed, except instead of riding, he was tilting a 3,000-pound car sideways at highway speed. So anytime a script called for that stunt, directors had two choices: rewrite it to match Buzz's handedness, or find someone else that was bold or crazy enough to try it the other way. Spoiler alert, they usually stuck with Buzz. His skill wasn't just rare, it was Hollywood elite. He was the go-to specialist for two-wheeled stunts across Hollywood, performing the same incredible feat on Knight Rider, The Fall Guy, and countless movies. So if you saw a car balancing on two wheels in the 80s, there was a pretty good chance that Buzz Bundy was behind the wheel. And when you compare it to the equipment-assisted stunts in the 2005 Dukes movie, Buzz's work, it just hits different. No rigs, no wires, just precision driving and pure nerve. Buzz Bundy passed away in 2020, but his legacy lives on, etched into every two-wheeled stunt that made our childhoods feel like magic. Number 1, reunited, oh, and it felt so good. Now here is a piece of television meta magic that probably flew right over your head if you weren't paying attention. In 2006, during the 5th season of Smallville, there's an episode called Exposed, where a Kansas senator named Jack Jennings shows up at the Kent farm. His car? A 1968 Dodge Charger RT. Blue instead of orange, but definitely generally adjacent. But here's the kicker. Senator Jack Jennings was played by Tom Wopat, a.k.a. Luke Duke. And Jonathan Kent? Well, that's John Schneider, Bo Duke himself. So you had both Duke boys reunited on screen with the Dodge Charger doing car stunts. Even Wopat's character's name was a tribute. Jack Jennings, that's obviously a nod to Waylon Jennings, the Duke's narrator and theme song performer. It was basically a stealth Dukes of Hazzard reunion disguised as a Smallville episode. And it was a classic little Easter egg that felt like catching up with old friends. And there you have it, everyone. 15 facts that prove the Dukes of Hazzard was just as wild, weird, and wonderful off-screen as it was on-screen. Now, which one of these facts caught you by surprise? Which ones did I miss? Well, sound off in the comments, and thanks for watching, everyone. Y'all come back now, you hear?